The Three Martini Lunch is sponsored today by 4 Patriots, makers of many fine products, including the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. We tell you all the time, you just don't know when your power is going to go out, whether it's bad weather, which is how 83% of power outages happen, by the way, or there's just some fluke accident in your neighborhood, but you want to be ready. So the Patriot Power Generator actually charges more devices for longer in a blackout than non-solar generators. Plus now double the capacity, more power than before, plus expandable capability for even more power. Keep it on hand to power that fridge, freezer, medical devices, or other appliances if your power goes out. Plus, comes with a solar panel, never needs gas, which means you don't need to pay for any more gas. Visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone and get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini.
Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We have 3 martinis for you, and depending on who you were supporting in the Iowa caucuses, they may range from good to bad to crazy. I think we can all pretty much agree that the middle one was not ideal, but let's start with the facts of the Iowa caucuses. The polls were pretty much exactly right. The final Des Moines Register poll had Trump at 48% of the vote. He ended up actually with more than that, slightly north of 50 last I saw early this morning. And then Ron DeSantis edging out Nikki Haley for second place, but it was a very distant second place. He, I believe, was a little bit north of 20%, and she was in the high teens. Vivek Ramaswamy in single digits. More on him a little bit later. Trump has considered this primary over for a long time. He says that's why he won't debate. In fact, even called for the RNC to stop having primaries. I don't know that that will necessarily happen. We're on to New Hampshire next week, as Bill Belichick would say, if you're the other candidates. But we also had a pretty significant drop in turnout from 8 years ago, from about 186,000 to 110,000. Some blame it on the weather. I think you can also chalk it up to a far less competitive caucus than it was 8 years ago. So, Jim, where do you start breaking this down? Because it's pretty much exactly what we thought it would be.
Yeah, that there really wasn't any surprises last night. For weeks, really months now, I've been saying that roughly half the party was hell-bent on renominating Donald Trump. And lo and behold, as of this moment on CNN, he's at 51%, right around half. And I said the other half of the party was, at this point, too divided amongst the other options and looked really deeply divided. That your typical Nikki Haley voter did not see the world the same way as your typical Ron DeSantis voter, who did not see things the same way as Vivek Ramaswamy's voters or Asa Hutchinson's voter, his singular. For those for wondering, good old Asa Hutchinson, 0.2%, 191 votes. Greg, for perspective, neither you nor I nor any of our listeners ran, and he's only 191 votes ahead of us, right? That's so.
Jim Gilmore's impressed.
Yeah, you're getting set up for Gilmore again. That at some point in the next week, Hutchinson is going to say, "I am going to win the New Hampshire primary." No, you're not, dude. Do you just really, really enjoy walking around shaking hands in diners? What are you doing with your life? Anyway, more significantly, though, look, Trump won, I believe, it looks like 98 out of 99 counties. If you're a Republican looking for victory, you can say, well, actually, this party is much more unified than the Trump critics, including myself, would like to admit. That by and large, the party is fine with renominating Trump. That there isn't this burgeoning movement against him, and that they're all fine with it. And went out and proved it last night. Also, I've heard people saying that this is a much more organized, much more professional and disciplined campaign organization around Trump. And I think last night's results would point to that, that this was a romp. This was better than Bob Dole had done. Biggest margin in that. And what's more is that the margin of votes for Trump was larger than his lead over DeSantis was larger than the total number of votes that DeSantis had. So I think, if the other thing is that if you were polling for Trump, A Nikki Haley second place finish might have been like really good momentum heading into New Hampshire, because Iowa, she only really had kind of started competing in seriously in the past few weeks. She finished in third. It was a very respectable third, particularly when it wasn't supposed to be her best state. But that's still third in what really a three-person race. And DeSantis, if DeSantis had been in the teens or had finished in third place, I think you'd hear a lot of pressure to drop out. This is the state where he spent the most time, visited all 99 counties, got endorsed by the governor, just a lot of advantages that, he did all the things you're supposed to do in Iowa, and he finished a very distant second. So I think he did well enough to keep going. He's not going to compete all that seriously in New Hampshire. It's not his kind of state. I think he's going to, focus heavily on South Carolina. And we'll see. I think it's been a while since there's been a big poll out there, but it still looked like Trump was well ahead. And I think the dynamic we saw yesterday, we're probably going to see something similar in the next couple of states. Now, maybe something will change by Super Tuesday. But all in all, it certainly looks like you're going to have Trump getting about half, and that other half split amongst the other candidates. And that is a formula for Trump getting the nomination. A lot of people don't like it when I report that, but that's what the numbers are saying. And we can also point out, for all the talk of, the polling, you can't trust the polls. Polls are always wrong. Now, the polls were pretty darn right on this one. This was pretty much what everybody was projecting, within a few points here and there. DeSantis did do better than his final polls, which kind of checks out with what people were telling me out in Iowa. They thought he had a very good organization. But this is Trump's world, and we're all living in it.
And you're right, Jim. As Yogi Berra liked to say, and you've mentioned many times, it gets late early out there. And in terms of the contest to come, somebody else is going to have to do something pretty significant in the next few contests to even make us pay attention to all the ones that follow. So much more on this and the other two martinis. But for now, Bioptimizer Magnesium Breakthrough. One thing that everybody's got to have is enough sleep. And if you're tracking caucus night and NFL playoffs last night, like both of us are doing, a little bit bleary-eyed today, and election night in general is always a very late night. So make sure you're ready for the daily grind and those special events to have the energy to get through with Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. And right now, 10% off any order at bioptimizers.com/martini and use the code martini.
Now, there are other magnesium supplements that are out there, but they're probably just giving you one or two forms of magnesium. Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms of magnesium designed to help calm your mind and help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. Magnesium Breakthrough also helps improve digestion, muscle recovery, and supports healthy bone density.
So do yourself a favor and make Magnesium Breakthrough part of your daily routine this year so you can get the vitality that you need to conquer your dreams. Go to bioptimizers.com/martini and enter the promo code martini to get 10% off any order. Again, that's bioptimizers.com/martini. bioptimizers.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our agreed-upon bad martini today, and that is the media just going way too early in calling the caucuses. Yes, the expectation was for a big Trump victory, but in the end, people clearly had not voted yet in some of these caucus sites, perhaps many of these caucus sites, when we got messages like this from Fox News.
We're going to make a call. Let's bring in Martha McCallum, anchor of The Story, and Brett Baer, anchor of Special Report. What do we have, guys?
So based on the first results and our Fox News voter analysis, the Fox News decision desk can now project that former President Donald Trump will win the Iowa caucuses.
He will take the lion's share of the state's 40 delegates. This result really solidifies his place as the current frontrunner for the nomination. Former Governor Haley and Governor DeSantis fighting for second.
And so, if you're doing entrance polling to the caucuses, then, you probably got a pretty good read on what it's going to be. But we see this with every election day. You don't go with that. You don't give your projection until the polls have closed. And the caucuses, it's a little bit more complicated because they're not just in and out. They sit there for a while and have their discussion. But when you're already saying that somebody has won and it's irresponsible on the part of the media, wouldn't have changed a thing in this outcome. It was a Trump romp. It was lopsided. The few people who might have been influenced by this by the time they got in the room, or if they were sitting around in the room checking their phone, I doubt would have made a huge difference given everything we had seen. Nonetheless, from Florida in 2002, so many other times in our election cycle, the media just can't help themselves. What would it have killed them to wait another half hour? I don't know, but it's become a pretty big story this morning.
It has, and we should, not conflate 2 points. Trump won this, and Trump won this big. And as mentioned about the margins in the previous martini, I don't think anyone rationally can argue that this early AP call altered the outcome. It may not even be easy to prove that it influenced the outcome, at least as of this point. I have not heard anybody talking about people leaving early or people necessarily changing their votes. But that having been said, it does appear that the Associated Press broke its stated policy. Now, there's a couple places on their website they've laid this stuff out, but the first thing they say is, quote, only when AP is fully confident a race has been won, defined most simply as the moment a trailing candidate no longer has a path to victory, will we make a call. So probably a good way of thinking about this, it's a hypothetical example, but let's say you have 51% of the vote in, and all of those people have voted for Donald Trump. Well, at that point, you could call it, even though there's 49% of the vote that still needs to be counted, because even if that 49% all voted for DeSantis, 49% is always going to be less than 51%. This is a very extreme example, just to illustrate the principle of this. That having been said, if you look deeper into how the AP's description of how they make their how they call the winner of a race, quote, AP will not call the winner of a race before all the polls in a jurisdiction are scheduled to close. End quote. I put the link to the page in the Today's Morning Jolt. Well, they didn't follow that. Like people were still voting, and so that was they broke their own rules. Now, if it's still up on the AP website, if they made some decision to change this, I think you got to announce it before the caucus starts and say, hey, we've decided we're going to announce it even if people are still voting. And I think considering how it was 7:30, how much longer would it have taken them to finish all the voting? 15 minutes, half an hour? It would not have been enormously long. And the scoop that Trump won was something that everybody had expected already. So, look, if you have a policy and you state that policy publicly and it's up there on the website, you should follow that policy. I think when you make a decision of, we're not going to follow that policy and don't tell anyone, right? And you just kind of suddenly blurt things out, you undermine trust in your organization. Doesn't make sense to anybody. Looks like you're trying to play, favorites or something. By the way, let's point out, this is a caucus. It's not a primary. There's no absentee voting in a caucus. There's no early voting in a caucus. You show up by 7 p.m. local time. You get in there, your high school gymnasium or whatever the location is, and you participate in it. And if you show up, as I understand it, if you show up at 7:01, you are out of luck. They close the doors and you cannot get in. And this is how all this stuff works. So it should be easier to count. It should not take a long time to count this. When I was looking on the websites, it said that 99% of the precincts or vote was in. And I don't, obviously I'm not going to worry about it. It's not going to alter the outcome very much, but what's going on with that 1%? I mean, I can remember the, days, C-SPAN used to watch it. They used to call it in on payphones to the state party headquarters. It was really kind of funny to see how old school and non-technologically advanced. By the way, as I understand it, no issues with the vote count, no issues with the tabulation last night. Considering how Iowa Democrats completely fumbled in 2020, good for you, Iowa Republicans. I still don't think you should always get to go first, but at least you seem to be relatively competent at your jobs, which is maybe more than we can say for the Associated Press.
Exactly right. Yeah. Democrats didn't really have a decisive winner in 2016 or 2020. We still don't know who really won the Republican caucus in 2012, so at least you do know who won, regardless of who you voted for. They did have a decisive winner. All right, let's talk about another phenomenal sponsor. Oh my goodness, Jim! I know you're out in Iowa, and they raise fantastic cattle out there, and it's the family farm that does it best. You know where I'm going with this. The Moink Box. From the family farm right to your front porch with the best bacon I've ever had. Seriously, the best bacon I've ever had. Moink delivers grass-fed and grass-finished beef and lamb, pastured pork and chicken, and sustainable wild-caught Alaskan salmon straight to your door. Moink farmers farm like our grandparents did, and as a result, Moink Moink meat tastes like it should because the family farm does it better. Again, you choose the meat delivered in every box. Ribeyes, chicken breasts, pork chops, salmon fillets, and a whole lot more. So keep American farming going by signing up at moinkbox.com/martini right now. And listeners of the 3 Martini Lunch get 2 free steaks in your first box. It's the best steak you'll ever taste, but for a limited time. Spelled MOINK box.com/martini. That's moinkbox.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our final martini now, and crazy martini. And look, everybody except Trump is licking their wounds, regardless of what their campaign tells you yesterday. DeSantis, perhaps most of all, but he says he got a ticket out of Iowa, which is way too similar to John Huntsman 12 years ago, saying that third place was a ticket to ride out of New Hampshire. I mean, the only person who's more disappointed from the expectations from 6 months ago are Philadelphia Eagles fans right now. I mean, we've got to be honest about that. Nikki Haley, thinks she basically made this a 2-person race. I think that's wishful thinking. She's backed out of the debates in New Hampshire since Trump won't do it anyway. But the one who officially will not be going on any longer, not Asa, no, he's sticking around, Vivek, who said he was in it to win it and was planning to go through all 50 states and everything. I think he ended up with 7% last night, which is still way better than Asa, but a pretty distant fourth compared to everyone else. And when second place is 30 points behind first place, being a distant fourth is really not that great. So he's officially out. But Jim, you see it as the classic candidate trying to tell everybody that they're in it when the tea leaves are all pointing to a very imminent end.
Yeah, we saw something similar with Chris Christie last week where, people are saying, are you going to drop out and endorse Haley? Or he's like, why should I drop out? I'm not going to drop out, everybody, and then, within a day or two, he drops out. And I kind of I understand why candidates have to do this. As somebody pointed out to me, it's not like they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to drop out in a week and a half. People never want to admit that the end is near. But the end result is you end up with candidates insisting that victory is imminent and we're going to do terrific. And, it's laughable to even suggest this. And then, lousy results come in and they turn, oh, yeah, okay, now we're totally dropping out. And in the case of Ramaswamy, who, by the way, I got to watch him out in Iowa. He was at a rally at the state capitol. The guy's got real retail politics skills. Now, it helps that he was talking about a topic that I'm more agreeable with him than his usual Nikki Haley wants your child to die so she can buy a bigger house type nonsense. He can't give you, we're going to do okay. He's got to talk about this. John McCormick, formerly National Review, jumped over to the Dispatch, did an interview and said, is there any chance you're dropping out after Iowa? And he said, and Ramaswamy answered, quote, I'm going to guarantee to stay in this race through November of this year when we win the election, through January of next year when I'm inaugurated as your next president, through January of 2033 when we leave the White House after 2 full terms. Now, Greg, I don't know about you, but when I read that, I rolled my eyes so hard a contact lens popped out. That's how, going into the caucuses, he's tweeting out, we will shock the world tonight. No, you won't. It's just, the other thing about Ramaswamy, Stephen Miller, not the one who worked in the Trump White House, but the acerbic, funny one on Twitter, said he keeps reminding him of Peter McNichol's character from Ghostbusters 2. You are like Lord Vigo. You are like flies buzzing to him. The sycophant who's always sucking up to Trump. When, Trump ripped into Ramaswamy, and a couple of people were like, oh, is this a sign that, Trump's in trouble? Or is he seeing something? I think Trump just wanted to run up the score. And he didn't like the idea of Ramaswamy taking whatever, small percentage he was going to take. As you said, it's like 7, I think last I checked, it was like 7.7%. The result comes out, and lo and behold, Ramaswamy's like, yeah, he's leaving the race because, quote, there's no path for me to be the next president. Oh, you just realized that now? Nothing really changed that much in the past hour or two, pal. It's you're in the same spot. The polling was not, everybody's like, oh, the polling's always wrong. No, it's not. No, it's not. And so we kind of have been in this thing where there were people who were predicting Ramaswamy was going to win. And if you're a cheerleader, if you are just somebody who's there to make supporters of a certain candidate feel good, fine. But don't let people think that is your, based on analysis and you've actually looked at the numbers and you've actually, we all kind of knew Ramaswamy was going to flame out. You think DeSantis spent a lot of time there. Ramaswamy did the full Grassley, did a bunch of those counties twice. I think it was like 239 different, stops and events. And those last couple of days, he was filming himself in the snowstorm. I'm like, give him A for effort. The guy tried. But no, you were never likely to be the nominee. You were always the longest of long shots. And so the idea there's no path for you to be the next president. Yes, that was obvious well before caucus night. So I just, By the way, one last note, Greg, do you know who our old friend Asa Hutchinson finished behind?
Who?
Ryan Binkley. All right, now, genuine question. Do you recognize that name?
Only because he showed up in a poll once. He's a pastor in Texas somewhere, right?
Correct. And when I was out in Iowa, he apparently had enough money to run ads during the Today Show. So been fairly professional looking, not like some used car dealer type ad. So he, and so he was at 0.7% to Asa Hutchinson's 0.2%. So congratulations, Ryan Binkley. You beat the former governor of Arkansas.
Just going off on the Ramaswamy story, I feel like some candidates, especially when they've invested as much as he has, and certainly DeSantis has, I think they just want to see actual people vote before they get out, even if the handwriting is on the wall. The handwriting was plenty for Mike Pence and eventually Chris Christie and Tim Scott. And so maybe for a guy who had never run for anything before, he just wanted to actually get to the point where somebody cast a ballot, and now reality smacked him in the face. That's the most charitable explanation I can give. But if he really thought that he somehow had a path when most of his time was spent talking about how he'd pardon Donald Trump, if it came to that, if Trump's already in the race, there's really not a reason for anyone to vote for you. So
the other thing I'm going to throw out is, you look at, Bloomberg at least had been a mayor. By the way, my kids still say Mike could get it done because they're just brainwashed into their heads through video game advertising for that 6-month stretch there. Tom Steyer, Steve Forbes at least had like this very clear, coherent free market philosophy that he wanted to, advance in the primary. But for one of these billionaires, like they say how they see the country as hurting. They want to help their country. They feel like, they feel a need. And it's like the only way they can conceive of helping the country is by running it. The only way they think they can do any good in this world is by being in charge of everything. And I just kind of like, there's a lot of ways to help your country, pal. And, a bunch of these guys, they've made charitable contributions and stuff. But there is this kind of mentality, this interesting mentality about billionaires, so that when they see the country with problems, the only way that they can conceive that these problems can be solved is by putting them in charge. Trump's a billionaire, but by and large, I don't think that's necessarily as appealing a sales pitch to voters as these guys think.
Jim, have a good day, and we will convene again tomorrow. See you then.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Columbus of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to our podcast if you don't already, and tell some friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They really are a huge help to us. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Tuesday, and join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.